Hey guys, gonna talk to you about my 1986 Toyota 4Runner 22RE automatic transmission. I'm gonna tell you my experience, so maybe you guys can learn from it, my mistakes. So I went to put I took the engine out, the engine got rebuilt. I went to put the engine back in. I had the torque converter installed on the back of the block, and I tried to put the engine inside with the torque converter on the back of the engine. Didn't go well. I basically would put it in, and then I would force the engine, line up the bolts, force the engine in, and every time I went to turn, I had all the bolts for the transmission housing, the bell housing in. I would go to turn the crank and the bolts would hit. And the reason the bolts would hit is because the torque converter, I couldn't get to seat inside. I don't know how other guys do it. I could not do it. So anyway, I went to go talk to a trans guy, and he said, don't do it like that. He said, you're better off putting the torque converter inside the transmission in the bell housing. There's videos on how to put the torque converter properly on top of the shaft into the trans. Watch those videos. It's just supposed to see, I think, 2 or 3 times. You'll hit click, and then the torque converter winds up getting all the way to the back. Then it was real easy. Then I just put the motor in. The motor lined up real easy. Put the bolts in. Now the torque converter is all the way to the back. So now I see a lot of people had the same questions I had. So how do you get those torque converter bolts in now? Obviously through the starter, they won't line up. You can see the bolts, right? You can see the bolts. You can kind of see the hole, but you can't, there's no way you can get it through there. So there's a small access panel that I'll show you in a little bit on the bottom of the engine, and you put them in through there. But I'm going to show you what I did. So these are the original bolts. This is the original bolt that goes on the torque converter. I think there's 6 of them, but so when I went to put them in, it wouldn't reach the torque converter because the torque converter was set back in. So what I wound up doing was I bought a 8.125 thread and a 10 millimeter head. This one has a chamfer on it. It has like a leading edge, so it helped me. So when I went to put it in through the flywheel, and it helped me locate the torque converter holes. So when the torque converter is set in the back and the engine is mounted up, you can spin that. The torque converter will spin easy. You can get through the torque converter. So anyway, I used a 10 millimeter gear wrench just to start it, just to line it up. Then I used a 1/4 inch ratchet with a 12 millimeter socket. I had two different ones, real thin, because you don't have much room to work in there. So let me show you. So this is the axis. That is the axis. That's all the room you got right in there. So if you see it, comes stock. It has a rubber grommet that covers it, obviously, for the dust. So you see there, that's the stock bolts. I already got everything in. So what I did is, since I couldn't get the original bolts in the beginning, it's really hard to get your hand in there, and you have to position your body in a certain way. I actually went with my left hand, but anyway, I wound up using that bolt, right, to start it when there was no bolts in. I used that bolt through, since it's nice and long. I wound up putting, you have a lip here. You have a lip on the inside of here, right? If you can see, all on here, right? So there's a hole. So just in case, I put a little, some rags on the inside of here, so that way every time I went to put the bolt in and it dropped, I was okay. And it wouldn't, fall in the back or anything like that. But anyway, so I used that bolt. Long bolt, to start it. I started with my hand. Once you position the holes, start it with your hand. Then I got the 10 millimeter gear wrench, because that's the only thing that'll fit with once you have a bolt that long the 10 millimeter gear wrench, and then I kind of, wiggled it and tried to pull it closer. Once I knew it was aligned, then I put the stock bolt in. I tightened it, not very tight. I snugged it, and then with a 19 millimeter 1/2 inch ratchet for your crank. You take your crank, you turn your crank. I went to the next bolt, and then the next bolt. I did it. I took my time. I went around probably twice. I torqued it halfway because I was scared I was gonna cock the torque converter and it was gonna get stuck. So I just kept going slow increments, and then at the end I put Loctite in it, and then with the 1/4 inch ratchet, I tightened it as hard as I could, and then I tightened up held it with the crank in the front 19 millimeter socket, and then tightened it. So I'm hoping this will help you. Yeah, so that's it.